Fantabulous, fantabulous, fantabulous. I've been waiting most eagerly, most eagerly. I'm having fun. I shared a post I made a long time ago about to say, how would you recognize an alien online? It's hard to tell. But it came about because I was responding to somebody and they made comments, and it just happened at the time. I was on a lot and I was sleeping odd hours. So it seemed like I was always on. So,
sorry.
And it was one of those banal people that always ask, where are you from? And they want to insist on knowing where you're from and all this stuff. So I said, where does it matter? For all you know, I could be an AI. Oh my goodness. They took this so seriously. And it's like as if like a light bulb went off in their head. And I said, and then I kind of teased a little bit. Okay, I played into it a little bit. It's my own fault a little bit. But and I was kind of teasing like it could possibly be, but they absolutely bought into it. And after that, they were completely convinced I was, next generation AI, because I made a whole case for it. Like, well, you know what, if they're putting out the AI, they're going to be testing it. And this is the ideal opportunity and place for test it. And they just absolutely believed it. But then it made me think, how would you know this? To me, I truly don't think you would be able to know. I really don't think so. Even if like, if you or me were an alien, if I had an alien consciousness into my brain,
right?
How would you know? Yeah, particularly if that consciousness is able to utilize the innerness of the individual. They would know how much they could. At least they'd have some sense of appropriateness, right? But within the bounds of appropriateness, there's such a wide range. I mean, how much do we not just excuse as being weirdness or oddness?
Right.
Right. It's Jones. Jones is research. Be a writer, and then you can really get away with anything.
Right.
Yeah. I'm a writer researching a role. Or an actor. It's like you can do anything pretty much. Isn't that amazing? Which brings up another little interesting side point. I'm keen to continue with what we're doing last week, but it just brings up an interesting side point too. In that, whenever I watch movies or read books, especially science fiction books or fantasy books, people from this and this planet and this culture, they're always uniform. And humans are supposed. Where in this possibility did you ever see uniformity? Even within very, very local, very tight subcultures, like in the Amish. Yeah, I mean, the Amish, for instance, they have this little ritual, but the, coming of age ceremony thing, where they actually send their kids off into the city, right? And they got to live outside of it because they know it's not for everybody, even though this is so deeply entrenched into their culture. At least they have that bit of sensibility going for them, right? All right, I'm kind of harsh on the Amish a little bit, but still, so this idea that there's uniformity, it's just, there's a typical person or typical this, all those assumptions that we make, they're just completely absurd. The only thing you can be certain of is there's great variability.
Right.
Or that we've been so thoroughly infiltrated by aliens that it's too late by now. Did I tell you my alien story on New York Broadway? Walking down Broadway?
I think so.
No? So when we were in Broadway, we got a hotel on 101st Avenue, 101st and Broadway. So we decided, we're going to walk downtown, not really being quite aware of, we wanted to save bus fare. We had, the funds were very tight. And that's why we got it on 101st and Broadway. Now, if you know you're New York, that's right on the edge of the Bronx. So, okay, whatever. Stuff like that wasn't very important to us. It was affordable, at least within our budget. So, all right. So we want to walk downtown, which is essentially 100 blocks. Well, off we go. We could walk forever in those days. So we walk and walk. Now, I doubt very seriously that there are many people who will walk 100 blocks in New York, particularly those 100 blocks. I mean, it's quite an undertaking, and there's a large amount of risk of too. We were kind of not oblivious, but we knew how to deal with that, through queuing and all that kind of stuff, right? So anyway, and just trust without trusting too, and which is you create your own things like that. So we walk and we walk and we walk and we walk past, of course, a lot of homeless people in New York, right? And you step over them every now and then. The pavements aren't all that big; they're sitting right there. So I walk past a couple, and I'm like to leave it, like did you see that? Is it just me? And she's like, yeah, okay. And we walk again, and the same thing. I'm seeing people who do not look like people. No
Mm.
way I can say that they are people. They're not just, deformities or people who've got elephantitis or something like that. Eventually I stopped. I said, I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to be rude because you don't want to stare, especially at homeless people. You don't want to stare. I said, no, I'm sorry, I'm just going to be rude. And I stopped and I looked. I really, really looked. And after that, I said, nope, sorry. There's no way in all my rationality that I can say, if you put me on a lie detector now, I will say sorry. Even though I don't believe it to be so, I have to say I'm not seeing something that is at least conventional human.
Right.
Now, many explanations, I mean, for instance, you could have throwbacks, recidivistic throwbacks to DNA like Neanderthals or whatever. Now they didn't look like that either. They didn't look like any kind of proto-human, pre-human, subhuman, or anything primate, nothing like that. No, they just did not look human. But they also would give you the impression that if you didn't pay attention, you would just assume they're human. They had enough queuing, in other words, to keep it going, but you couldn't really get a fix on it. It was the most incredible thing. And this happened multiple times. And this was long before Men in Black came out.
Right.
I mean, I mean, probably at least a decade before first Men in Black came out. I was very amused when I did see that in Men in Black. New York City was where they sent all the aliens. Well, they were criminals too, but where they were undercover like that because they fit in so easily. And it made total sense to me. But that was really something that was truly mind blowing. I never forget that. It was really something that it's not just they look alien.
Right.
No, I can't say they appeared just different because of all you could say drugs or disease or whatever. No, there was much more to it than that. And it was, I don't know, 100 blocks. I would say at least there was one homeless person per block. Now some of them were human, but it's not a small sample size. We're looking at a couple dozen cases here. So and that's at least one block, if not a lot more than that. So likely in total, be 3, 4, 5 a block, whatever. A lot of people we crossed over. A lot of um, so it goes into it ties back to our conversation. Not everything is as it appears to be. Yes, and part of what we're talking about with the nawal and with your tether, it's interesting that you call it the tether too, which is really fascinating to me. All of this means that we need to be open to alternative possibilities. Now, in the same vein, I've experienced some miraculously wild and wonderful things, and then sometime later it turns out there's some ridiculously, idiotically trivial and mundane, stupid thing. And it's like, oh, I feel such a fool, but I don't feel like a fool because at the time I do my best, and I always keep in mind it could be a mundane and a trivial explanation. I never ever forget that. And furthermore, I make a concerted effort to look for the most mundane and simplest explanation. Occam's razor. I really, really make that effort, but sometimes I just fail. And like this story with the horse, with horse being, it just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Yeah, in any normal way, which is why the story is so powerful. And just anybody who has any kind of sense, but somebody I shared the story with somebody, or they read the story. I was Cheryl, and she said, she used to work at a place where they did, horse riding, like where people take it, for kids. They come and you get on a horse and you ride or whatever. So that exactly. No way you can put somebody who's never ever been on a horse before, plus who's a little bit scared of horses, on a horse that is completely unknown to you and has no bridle and no saddle. They still had a bridle and a saddle, fine. But, I mean, you're cautious about putting new people on horses, even if they tame horses and bridle and saddle, it's just so the whole thing. And then the horse running around like that 3 times, I think it went around and then came, dropped off, and off it went. Mission accomplished. But, the symbology of it is, going for a ride. And, the ride that we were on, and me putting her on that ride, which was a lot part of it. It requires trust. And that whole exercise was about complete and utter trust, just application of trust. Sorry to I know we've gone over that story many times, but it's so potent, the trust aspect of it and the magical part of it and all of it, So I bring it up because that's a great example of, for me, something where I cannot, no, I tried really hard to find mundane explanations for that. Let's assume that was a tame horse from, I don't know. I'm assuming it was. I know. Afterwards, I think I saw where there were horses on the neighbor's farm, and it got loose. It would have had to, go about 3 or 4 miles with no water in between to get to us. It was very fresh when it got there, and we didn't give it any water either.
Right.
Yeah. So, and that was in the middle of the day too. It's hot, so it seems pretty unlikely. Anyway, it's possible. But even if it was a tame horse, me putting Olivia on that horse and it running around without bridle and saddle like that, and it didn't look at me.
Right.
It looked for Olivia, I mean, that was very clear. I'm very astute at paying attention to intent, something I'd studied up at that point assiduously every single day of my life, reading people, reading beings, seeing what their intent is. That was a that's the part that was really exceptional. The way it was moving and looking like that, it was on a mission to find something. And when I found Olivia, by the way, went right to her. Just fascinating, the implications involved. So the reason I mention this is, I bring all this stuff up is because of Don Juan. Don Juan has a lot of stuff that applies to the here now and the mundane. And when I was really studying this, at the end of my big reading project, I started that with looking to underline stuff and put it in my own notebooks. I didn't do too much of it. Unfortunately, there was this dearth of sensibility, and it had to be practically applicable. That was my key. One of my criteria for applicability was that it needed to be able to make sense to a businessman.
Yeah.
Very specific criteria, which I kept all the way until way of impeccability. It needs to be able to make sense to a businessman.
Right.
So, but when I came to Don Juan, there was tons of stuff which would I have a few in like I told you, I had a couple quotes from him, but tons of stuff that could apply to a businessman, equally sensible. Now again, it's the same tons of stuff that's sensible everywhere else. He just had nice language in one, a really excellent language. That was the thing that was the big point with Don Juan, his language. At any rate, he also, though, beside having tons of stuff which applies in the everyday world, like impeccability. I mean, he's huge on impeccability. It's a big point for him. Beside that, though, he's also got a lot of stuff that's way out there. Yeah, it all makes sense within his system. And this is the point I want to make. Don Juan makes a very acute point of saying that there are alternate realities. I mean, book number 2 is called A Separate Reality. Now, Carlos confused this with the whole psychedelic thing, right? Now, Carlos also is a writer, and, you can see Carlos's personality and character come through a bit at the time. He was in UCLA at that time, right? And this was, I think the first book came out in 67, if I remember correctly. It's 67 or 69. At the height of the hippie culture, drug culture becoming very popular. So, and at that time, very few people had written in a way that sort of accepted drugs as being something spiritually valuable and potent, not just for fun and games. So he legitimized a lot of people's indulgence, in other words, which made the books very popular. And also it went into depth. I mean, Aldous Huxley had written about it, and I'm not sure when he wrote about it. Very interesting what Aldous Huxley wrote, by the way. Yeah, I do suspect it may be a little after that. But anyway, so in the cultural context, his book was very timeless, and it helped to bring Don Juan out, which again I think is the universe using Carlos, who's a popularist, because later when the drug stuff changed and it wasn't so cool anymore, his books also changed and other stuff started to come in. So it's very interesting, how he sort of stayed with the times. And but that's to me the magic of the universe, and also I noticed this very often, that people who got into it because of the drugs, they read maybe book 2, maybe book 3, and then they lost interest. When it started to get a bit deeper and more serious, yeah. But they also, oh, what wonderful books. Oh, you read all of them? Oh no, I just read the first 2 or 3. Isn't that fascinating to me? It just blows my mind. It's like, if you got value out of it, how do you not continue reading? I never could understand this. I saw it many times. You say, wow, they were so fantastic. They're so incredible. Don Why they go all about how profound these books are, and yet they don't finish reading them. It's too
Yeah.
incredible. Anyway, so but still though, Don Juan is making a very big case for things that happen and he has a few of them. He will say in the second attention, which is different to heightened awareness, right? So heightened awareness at the time, it made sense to me, but now I know exactly why. Heightened awareness is what happens when we have a profound emphasis and our brain changes, right? So you can think anytime you under any kind of profound emphasis of some kind or other, whether it be dramatic or exciting or novel or whatever, your brain literally is rewired in that moment. So when you go back to it, you don't necessarily remember. And when it's extreme heightened awareness, especially in the context in which this applies to Carlos, when he's so transformed out of his ordinary reality,
Right.
to be in a reality that is absolutely incomprehensible to him. It's too fantastic to be true. So the brain treats it as that, and he can't remember. He
Ah,
can remember, yeah, and he can remember when he's in heightened awareness. He can remember himself not remembering, and it really like stresses and bothers him the hell out of him. But Don Juan says that you can remember and retrieve those memories. You just have to immerse inside that memory,
right,
right? And this tied up for me in the understanding of memorable events and significant experiences.
right.
When you do that, you can recreate it, right? So all right, so that's heightened awareness. Then there's the second attention, which is a whole different ballgame altogether now again. The second attention is what Don Juan says when you shift from us kind of normal space here and we move into our energy being. And
Okay.
now we start to deal with the second attention. Now, I will have to go back and relook at it again, but I also am under the understanding now that I talk about it and explain it, because this was always stuff just for myself. I never ever had a chance to discuss it much with anyone. The second attention is available to us here now. We don't necessarily have to go into the energy being and vice versa, but it's a different type of attention. It's a paradigm shift, in other words, where things operate and work differently. Much like I'm not sure. I again, it's stuff for me that wasn't always that pertinent and relevant to where I'm at. So I don't pay too much attention to it in the sense of remembering the exact details. But I'm fairly sure that the dreaming attention is second attention. Yeah, because Don Juan says, the dreaming attention, and as people know who've done, deliberate dreaming exercises, which I've done too, to do conscious or lucid dreaming, it operates differently to our attention now. Not necessarily that differently, except we coming into it as a new attention, much like when we were babies, right? So when we were babies, stuff was fuzzy and you couldn't quite see it, and slowly it congealed on stuff. And especially, like, I don't know, some people can remember this. When you focus on something in that early stages, it starts to unravel. You can't hold it. You don't have enough energy and power to hold it as a clarity, right? So
Right.
the more you stare, the more fuzzy it becomes. But when you start to accept it, then it congeals, or you
Right.
kind of, you don't look too long at anything, because when you look you really stare at stuff, it starts to become fuzzy and break down. Because really, our reality, and this is a big point, right? So I'm sharing a lot of stuff. It's all coming together now. The reason that happens when you stare too long and things break down is because really what we're staring at is a description, not
Mm,
an actuality, right? So that's the thing. We've taken energy through our description, and through that in the brain, we've made it into a reality. But of course, it's not truly real. We just appear to be real. So if you kind of stare, it's like staring at somebody's disguise. You stare too long, the disguise breaks down, right? So it's the same thing, sort of. So it's pretty interesting. But in dreaming, we have to do basically, we're coming into it now as babies, and we have to restart again because you're
right.
using all the same brain and everything. So anyway, lots of stuff involved. But the key point, where especially with the aliens thing, is that this openness to otherness. That do not assume the world works the way we think it does. That's the key point there,
Yep.
right? And to, of course, not to lose our ability to think rationally and sensibly and logically, right? To really be Sherlock Holmes. When we eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. Yes?
That's
All right.
what stuck in my mind over the last 2 days as I've been thinking about this is that, I think previously, anytime I encountered or thought about things that I would have sort of slotted into, like, supernatural category or whatever, I'm coming to and that really scared me because it was like, I don't really know anything about this, and this has sort of always been a thing for me, and I don't like it. I've shifted that conception, I think, in my mind to anything that we tend to categorize as quote unquote supernatural is really just a part of the umbrella of things that we don't understand.
Say the last part again, please.
We tend to things that I would have previously categorized as sort of supernatural or woo woo or all these things.
Yeah.
I think now I'm understanding that to be, these are just things that I don't understand. And there's a whole category of things that I don't understand. We
Yeah.
tend to, lump this specific set of things into its own thing. And we talk about, oh, it's got all of these specific things associated with it, but really all of it is just something that I don't have a full understanding of. So it's not something that I have to be afraid of. It's not something that I have to immediately set certain parameters around and decide that this is how it works. And if this is happening, then this also must be happening. It's just something that I don't understand. And
Exactly. Exactly.
doesn't mean that it actually has to be, anything to do with spirits or anything like that. It's just something that I don't understand. And the universe is full of things.
Exactly. 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 And then, especially if you read a lot of science fiction, there's so many magnificent explanations that are ridiculously plausible and sensible for all sorts of magical things. And I love that. It's one of the reasons I really enjoy science fiction or fantasy stories, that, they really push those boundaries and they open your brain to
Yeah.
being truly, truly open.
Well,
It's very important.
something that I'm really interesting about this kind of particular topic is that, back, I think it's fascinating. One of the sort of original interesting collaborative counterbalances, or what I originally thought of as a coexisting conundrum for me, was science and sort of magic. And it was like, if you believe in science, then you can't believe in the impossible or in unexplainable things.
Exactly.
Things that are complete opposing. And the same thing happens with religion and science. Oh no, if you believe in this, then you don't believe in this. And to me, what I find fascinating is, back not really all that long ago, but certainly throughout human history up until fairly recently, and I mean still today, this is still happening, we have, back several hundred years ago, we had a much more limited view of or understanding of things that, forces that were happening in the universe, what's happening in space, all these different things. And we would explain the things that we didn't understand through magic. And we would say, well, okay, this doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand how this works. So this is some kind of magic. And, this must mean that magic exists. And, we're just going to explain the unexplainable by telling a story or saying it's some special, magical force or whatever. And as we learn more about science, through science, about our environment, we start coming up with these, discovering these really interesting explanations. But what I think is really fascinating is we tend to have this totally binary view of, well, now that we have a scientific explanation for this, it's no longer magical. But to me,
exactly.
I mean, when you look at the way that our universe works and the things that we do understand and have scientific proven explanations for, they're incredible. I mean, the things that exist in this
yes
mind-blowing, magical. It's unbelievable to think that the universe works the way that it does from the limited understanding that we have. Why is it that once we have an explanation for something, all of a sudden it becomes sort of it's not shiny and exciting anymore, and it's not magical, it's not something, exciting? I don't think these two things are mutually exclusive. And
exactly,
that's one of the
exactly, they are not. Exactly.
Yeah, and I
exactly
think science fiction does really well is sort of merges these two science and magic, merging it sort of pushes the boundaries of what do you believe to be part of science. And these people
exactly
that are much more technologically and scientifically advanced than us, but they also can read minds, or they can they have
exactly
it sort of forces you to think outside the box a little bit.
Exactly. I mean, reading minds, our brains give off a very real electromagnetic field. They are literal brain waves, right? Which is where the expression comes from. So how is telepathy not simply the ability to connect to those? Now, it's a very weak field, but weak or not, it doesn't mean that it doesn't radiate out, right? So, I mean, to be telepathically connected to somebody, first of all, one would have to assume those telepaths have the ability to not just radiate them and they go weaker. They have to literally be very close, touching your heads the way we radiate it. But if you could concentrate those and beam it out, that would be a whole different thing. Furthermore, beaming like from a regular flashlight, that beam continues to disperse.
Whoops, I lost you. I can't hear you. Still can't hear you. I can't hear.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Let me put you up, yeah. Sorry.
The last thing I heard was you said waves from a flashlight continue to disperse.
Right. Whereas from a laser do not.
Okay.
So, one would think from a telepathic point of view, yes, a flashlight beam would work, but you'd have signal coherence degradation over distance. Whereas a laser beam makes no difference as long as it's not interrupted, forever. Now, maybe there are signals that travel through things like
I lost it again.
Hang on. I don't like when it drops me.
Difficult to understand.
Yeah. I'm just trying to put off some, I had the story app that I was listening to before you came on. Actually, there was a story involving telepaths.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. The last two stories actually were involving telepaths. So I was saying, that there's many ways that this could happen, and a further one is that, when you were reading Einstein, especially in the modern physics, I keep forgetting what to call it, but where you have a particle, and every particle has another particle that's associated to it. And no matter where the two particles are in time and space, when one moves, the other moves, right?
It's something, I think it's called sticky. It's like something stickiness. I can't remember.
Yeah. Sticky particles or something. It's got some weird kind of name to it. But my point is, that to me seems to be the most ideal, faster than light communication method.
Yes, true. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and
So,
they've talked about trying to use that when I was reading the Einstein book, they were talking about how scientists are trying to use that to, I think they were talking about like teleportation. Like that's one of.
yeah. That would make sense, because all you got to do is, exactly, if you have that molecule and you can, create a second one, a third one, a pattern, or, that atom really, or electron, whatever it is, a particle, really, it's a particle. If you can start adding onto it and they add on the other side, well, there you go. You might not actually move the object, but you would be able to duplicate.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, quite fascinating. And then you just have to, move the consciousness between the two, or you'd have simultaneous consciousness. And I think that's Don Juan's idea of the double. It's got a lot of that into it.
That was
Fascinating stuff. So there's all sorts of, scientific possibilities that, the light barrier faster than light. Einstein, this was a big problem, because he says the faster you go, the heavier you become. Your mass increases. By the time your speed reaches the speed of light, your mass is infinite. So that's why we cannot travel faster than light. You cannot even actually travel at the speed of light if you have mass,
right,
because your mass will be infinite, right? So light can move at the speed of light because it doesn't have mass. Yeah. So, one would think that thought, being an electromagnetic field, could also move at the speed of light, but faster than the speed of light. There are all sorts of reasons for that barrier, and it causes a lot of problems. But those particles moving in simultaneous like that, that's moving faster than the speed of light. So at any rate, science is a magical thing, is my point. To me, science is magic. Yeah. Wizardry, real wizardry, is scientific. So when we understand that, it's a big, big jump. Now, I want to go back to one key point here. All right, Sherlock Holmes logic, right? When we eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. Right? I love that quote. Very powerful quote. However, we apply way of impeccability to it, our discernment, our thoroughness, right? Our scrupulousness. And we take it, right? So when we eliminate the impossible, right? First of all, the word eliminate. That's very, very, very difficult to do, right?
eliminating the impossible.
But just eliminate. Never mind the impossible. We're just going at word by word, the key words here. Just to eliminate, to have that certainty. That's quite a profound thing to be able to do, right? Secondly, the impossible, right? Yes, I can eliminate what I believe to be impossible. And this is a key point. Impossible at this stage, especially in our stage of science, possibility is simply a belief. It's no longer a hard fact. And I'll give a fantastic example. So when I was a youth, as Joe Pesci says, right? When I was a youth, I did a lot of dinghy sailing. And, one of the key things with sailing is you can't sail directly into the wind. It's like a dir thing. I mean, you can try it, your sails will flap and you won't go anywhere, right? You have no force in it, all the reasons for it. However, one can sail into the wind, right? Now, it does require a little bit of a rearrangement of the elements on your boat, but it is possible, and somebody's done this. I have a whole big article on it with the links to the people who did this. All they, how familiar you are with sailing, but they just took sails, and instead of putting them the typical way with the mast and the sail is at somewhat of an angle, they put those on a wheel, like on a windmill, right? But a windmill sails aren't aerodynamic sails, because an aerodynamic sail is basically the shape of an aeroplane wing, kind of a half of it, right? There's a vacuum on the one side, and then so anyway, so they just put these on a wheel, right? And so the things are moving, they sailing 90 degrees to the wind, right? Like you're saying, across the wind in your boat, the same way, but except on a wheel that spins around, right? Now that wheel can face directly into the wind, but the sails are sailing across the wind, around and around in a circle, right? And that that circle that is on an axis that with a gear, and that gear goes to either the wheels or to a propeller, and there you go, right? The power, the craft is powered by wind power, but it moves directly into the wind.
Right.
So sailing into the wind, and that's sailing because they use sails on that thing, right? So sailing into the wind is possible. All it required was a bit of creative rethinking. Yeah, that's it. You cannot sail into the wind with that type of sailing arrangement, physical arrangement. All it required was no great feat of engineering, mathematics, nothing. Was simply imagination, right? Unhooking from this idea. Any sailor could come up with that. Any sailor in all of history who understands sailing could come up with that. Here's the part that I really, really love about that. Because when you sail in sailing, I love sailing. It's like golf, it deals with conceptions. Most people, when they think of sailing, they think of a sailboat being pushed by the wind, right? That's a typical conception. And you can see this in old-timey ships, right? They like a Viking ship. It's a sail that's kind of billowing, and you can see it's only geared to take wind from behind. They never understood the aerodynamic effect of wind, right? Once that started to come into being, like in the dinghies that I sailed, the slowest way to sail is directly downwind. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Even when you sail, you can't sail 100% to the wind, but you can get fairly close, like maybe 30 degrees, somewhere around there. I'm not sure the exact degree because it varies on the type of boat here, but somewhere in that direction. You're still sailing generally upwind. Now you have to zigzag, but still, even when you're going into the wind, you're still going faster than dead downwind. Yeah. Your fastest way to sail is across the wind and slightly downwind, right? A broad reach, you would call. So now in the modern boats, if you look at like the America's Cup, the modern incarnations, where they're on the hydrofoils, right, where they're being very efficient with their sailing, they go faster than the wind by 3 to 4 times sometimes. Yeah. This fascinates me. Yeah. That same craft that they use for the propeller, it goes faster into the wind than the speed of the wind. Isn't that fantastic? And the reason for this is because you use the wind, and then when the sails move, they also move through they create an apparent wind, like when you drive on a still day and you put your hand out the window, right? You've got apparent wind. So you've got real wind and apparent wind. That apparent wind adds to the speed of your sailing. That's why they go faster than the speed of the wind. That concept, you can use a force coming at you. You can go directly at force. Using that force, you can go faster than that force. This blows my mind. To me, this is pure magic. Yes. Right? I mean, logically, we would assume that to be possible, right? I mean, if you pose this as a general problem of force to a group of students, for instance, and said, look, you got a force that's coming at you, is it reasonable to expect that you can use that force to go back into the force?
Right.
Well, duh, no. Yeah, our obvious experience says duh, no. Secondly, all right, that's your first assumption. Secondly, would you be able to use that force to go faster than that force itself? No. But yes, you can. Now, yes, you are using the elements. You are strategically using the elements, right? So you're using the aerodynamic effect. You're using the apparent wind. You're doing all sorts of magical things, but nonetheless, you get a magical result. Right. To me, this is really mind-blowing. Sailing to me was always magical. I loved it because I really understood sailing back then. It's fantastic.
This
So sorry,
reminds me.
one more quick point. Just I'm trying to connect this back to my Sherlock Holmes statement. That yes, Sherlock, that's all great and well if you know what the impossible is, right?
Right.
However, sorry, and to me now, since I have absolutely clearly experienced the impossible becoming possible many times, I have to be very cautious with that to say, I simply have to say the most probable is the closest to what might be the truth in the story. I cannot say I can define the truth because the truth is a variable. So I changed my whole perspective. It's still useful in a mundane way, but other than that, something to take with great care and lots of caution. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, what you were saying about the sailing thing, I remember that reminded me of, I will never forget the first time that quantum computing was explained to me.
What kind of computing?
Quantum computing.
Oh, quantum computing. Yeah.
I was in college and I was taking, I don't even remember what class it was, but I remember the teacher starts explaining how quantum computing worked, and that was also coincidentally the first time that anyone had ever really explained in a very simplistic way what quantum physics really was.
Right.
I had no idea what any of that meant, and so he did this very brief overview of quantum physics and the concept of there being this sort of infinite number of possibilities of reality, basically, and that they all exist simultaneously until observed, and then once observed, one of them snaps into place. And that quantum computing was basically taking advantage of the simultaneous existence of multiple probabilities, using that to boost computing power, basically. And just like hearing him explain that, for me, that was one of the very distinctive moments in my life of hearing something that is not theory. It's not, we think how it works. This is proven. This is how this works, and this actually works. Like, this is how quantum computers are built, and this is how this works. It sounded like something out of a made up science fiction novel. I mean, the fact that is actually how things work, that just completely blew my mind. And I mean, that to me was definitely one of those moments of hearing something that sounds completely impossible, but it's not, and it works, and it is like a proven thing. That was, I mean, and like I said earlier, to me, that's one of the I think that's one of the things that I love about science so much, is that there are so many things that we learn about our universe in science that are so unbelievably magical, improbable, just unbelievable.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
To observe that, to make sense of it, to understand it, I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. So, I really do see myself as being a spiritual scientist.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's just a magical thing. And this Don Juan says too, this is, to me, it's what one of the appeals was, that this was always key for me, that practicality, like I said, that businessman's perspective. Because you can get so lost if you don't have a solidity, if you don't have that sobriety, in other words, right? So that, to me, when I started my notes, the practical application, long before I got to Don Juan, that intent of mind, that it has to be utilizable, it has to be something that has a sensibility to it, from that businessman sensibility is another way of saying sobriety, right? I loved sobriety. It was absolutely very key, big point, big issue for me. So that sobriety, this to me is absolutely critical. If you go into all of the spirituality, the magic, without sobriety, you're going to get lost very quickly, right? Because there are so many false leads and so much stuff that could derail you, and you could get lost in wishful thinking and hopefulness. And also, should you succeed, that's even worse. Now you enter into these alternative realities, which are different paradigms, and you don't have the ability to stay with it, and you get lost and you lose yourself, etc. Like we explained the other day. So this is important, and it is of the entirety of what we're about, that we are preparing for those alternate realities.
Right.
Yeah, what we're about. This is what we're doing. It's very, very, very key. That broadness, that openness, but at the same time, having our core, our building blocks, our foundation stones, in other words, our dictionary of power, for that to be absolutely rock solid.
Right.
And we have an abstract, it's at the same time as it's solid, it's unchanging, it's unvariable. These are magical because they open abstract conceptions. They allow us to adjust to any reality, right? So they are multi-tools, as it were, conceptual multi-tools that adapt to the circumstance always. Very, 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 very powerful. That fluidity, that flexibility, that adaptability. And it's all under this heading. That's why, the context of appropriateness. It's why the entire A+ philosophy is headed by appropriateness. When we truly, truly, truly understand appropriateness and our ability to be appropriate, then we can venture into alternate realities.
Right.
Yes? I mean, this is what the entire A+ philosophy is about. It is to enable us to be appropriate, which is, first of all, you need awareness. Secondly, you need attunement. Why is awareness not enough on its own? Because my awareness is limited.
Right.
So I go into an alternative reality and I know bugger all. Now I'm really, really lost because, well, my awareness isn't enough. I'm not aware of how the system works. I can survive there. Why? Because I pay attention to attunement. I pay attention to symbology. I pay attention to force of circumstance. I can use the universe to bail me out, as it were, to guide me, to show me. So I have a system in place that prepares me to deal with any system. Yes?
Right.
Because also, of course, right, the anchoring point of that triangle pyramid, right, is application.
Right.
So I need to be able to apply, and when it comes to attunement, I need to be able to apply without understanding.
Okay.
And to be able to thus act without agenda.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Very, very important. Very, very important.
Applying without,
I don't know where they'll say again.
You said attunement is applying without understanding. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. Or we need to have the ability to be able to do so. It's not always so. Sometimes I do get it, but not always. I need to have the ability to apply without understanding, to act without agenda. Because the universe may be putting me in a situation where I got to do something which, well, that doesn't sound like fun for me, but it's in a bigger picture. I'm being a cog in the wheel. I've got to be able to do this, because then later, it turns out, the universe can see how it all works together. I cannot. So I have to trust. And this is where our ability to apply, to act without agenda, is the application of profound, profound, profound trust, right?
Right.
So this is all, you see how it all ties together, right? All ties together. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, going through all of this. Now, I have a major question for you. You started sharing about the signs, and the scratching, 2 different signs. And you were sharing about anomalous stuff coming up, actual literal application, implementation, experiences, share your experience of these things in the practice. And you said, oh, finally, I've got something to share. Now, you told me the story about the scratching before. You didn't mention that it was next to Axel, which was a new little wrinkle, which is fascinating. Right. But I'm not sure what stimulated it. Why? Did something happen now in the last few days?
Over the last few weeks, I've been seeing the smiley face symbol again at a pretty regular frequency.
Oh, wow.
And I think we said before that, it's a fairly common symbol. I see, it's not like I don't see it often. Yeah. But for me,
I don't see it very often at all. I can't remember ever having really, unless I saw it in typing, but it's not something I've seen. Yeah.
One of the things that has stuck out to me that I was just talking to Kathy about yesterday was, I think in my sort of pragmatism, I tend to discount feeling alone. Like if I get a feeling about something and I don't have some concrete evidence or something to go along with it, I tend to discount the feeling and sort of go, well, it was just a feeling, whatever, And I'm starting to understand more that, just because all I have to go on is a feeling doesn't mean that it's something that should be invalidated, tossed out, not paid attention to. And so part of what's been interesting with this process is, I have seen this symbol, certainly over the years, between the original, all of the happenings at Phil's house, and then, other important things. The difference being that I think sometimes when I see it, there's no real feeling associated with it. I see it and it's just the symbol. And sometimes when I see it, it sticks out in my mind. And I sort of immediately associate that with these other situations. And so for me, although, the practical part of my brain goes, that makes no sense, I mean, who cares, if it's just a feeling about the thing, then that doesn't mean anything. But I think I'm paying more attention now to, for me, feelings and what I am feeling is one of, I don't know, I'm not sure how to describe it exactly, but I think I said this to somebody the other day, that I think I feel at this point that the universe communicates to all of us in different ways.
Absolutely. It's always individual, has to be customized.
So if I experience something, if I see something, if I hear something, if I feel something, any of these things, then it's something important to me. And it's a message that I need to pay attention to, whether anyone else experiences it or not, whether it's some totally mundane thing like a silly smiley face that means nothing to anybody else. If it means something specific to me and I feel that, then there was a point to that. It's not just something that I should just toss aside and think nothing of. So for me, really the only difference in the last few weeks has been an increase in the amount of times that I have noticed this.
Wow.
And the feeling that symbol sort of evoked when I have seen it. And, I haven't seen it in any particular, like, I couldn't really tell you for sure any particular place that I saw it that really stuck out to me in my memory, except that I think I shared this the other day, that the one that really finally got me and made me take action on, starting to do some research was that, I think I told you this, about the video that I saw on Instagram of the guy, the watermelon balloon and his house,
the watermelon balloon had that face on it.
And so that was the most recent one of those. And there had been a string of me seeing the symbol and sort of immediately thinking about Axel and these other things that had happened. And so that one was kind of the final straw, where it was like very in my face. It really stuck out in my mind. And that's what made me start doing research. I started with the term Nawal because that was the one thing that stuck out to me from that experience that I didn't necessarily associate with the scariness of what was happening with the house, because the Nawal piece had occurred before we moved there. So that was the one thing that stuck out to me in my mind of something that I remembered that I associated with that time period, but wasn't part of the scary stuff. And that's what led to all of the Aztec mythology and Toltec and all of that stuff. So
I wonder if a similar symbol is a Toltec or Aztec or Olmec even comes into, is it?
I don't know.
Like that. I changed the background because the old one was a little dark, and I kind of going through the file, and these started to come up next. So yeah, it actually, just a quick little point of interest. To find this particular picture, a girl riding bareback on a white horse, I spent days, if not weeks, trying to find it. It's the only one I ever found.
Wow.
Yeah, always they had a bridle on. There were plenty shots of bareback, but also not where the horses is moving, clearly moving like this one, and which I did with Olivia. They'd be just sitting a model on the horse, like, and like obviously a younger girl like this, but bareback without a saddle, without a bridle, the only one I ever found, and also moving, and a white horse. It's just amazing. Yeah, the white horse isn't so hard to find. They were typically.
Oops, I lost you.
So to find this picture.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, sorry. I said I was very happy to find the picture. It was a big deal. So I'm very keen to know if that symbol has any meaning. I looked it up. To me, I always thought it meant a wry smile, but I see it also means confused or perplexed, right?
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. But I always thought it was a wry smile, like you're kind of a sideways, like, I don't know if I do a wry smile really well. My face is not made for emoticons, I don't think. Not to imitate emoticons.
Yes.
So you were saying about feeling, right?
Yeah.
This is a part of our sophistication. We want to not ignore feelings. At the same token, just because I feel it does not necessarily mean it's real. So it goes both ways. We don't want to ignore stuff just because it's a feeling. Absolutely not. But we don't also want to take stuff as being an absolute fact because of it's a feeling, right? So that whole relationship between feeling and believing, we do need to understand that is a very, very tricky relationship, yes? Which is, again, why application, verification, justification, substantiation, testing, proving, making it our own, why it is so critical. Right. Because it's so easy to believe stuff based on a feeling, or to feel stuff based on a belief. It's a very, very, very critical deal. Very, very critical deal.
Absolutely.
So this is why key points always we come back to ADU: awareness, discernment, understanding. Right? So critical. That discernment in there, you can say awareness plus discernment equal understanding. It's so easy to have awareness and assume we have understanding because of our awareness. No. We have to apply that discernment, and discernment is, it's a compounding, exponentially compound awareness, discernment. It gets deeper more. The more you discern, the more there is to discern. So it's something profound. We live in a complicated universe. Let's put it that way. There's lots of moreness to think. Yeah. But we can unravel it, and we have the tools to unravel it. We do want to understand, though, how it works. It's a lot more complicated than we imagine.
Right.
It's exciting. Very exciting. So I was just very keen to know what stimulated recently. So next time you see this, show me in the context that you see it. Even like on that video, take a snapshot. I'm very keen to see. Like I say, I never see that symbol. Never.
I need to go up and see if I can find it on our bedroom floor again.
I mean, the only time I remember seeing it was way back when, where people were still typing smiley faces, and I used to type it the other way around, by the way.
Nice.
Until I was told that's very uncool. Yeah. It's more efficient to type it that way. I will mention, by the way, more energy efficient on your keyboard.
Really?
very, very mildly, but.
Yeah, I'll go up and see if I can find it on the floor. I've got to figure out where Axel's bed would have been, but I'll see if I can find it.
But also when you come across it in just, like online or wherever, I'm still keen to see it there too. It's just interesting that it comes up now. It doesn't matter too critically. It's just my own curiosity. I'd like to visually see what you're seeing, like which way the slash is lying, for instance. Is it always the same way?
Yep.
In other words, is it the forward slash or backslash?
No, it's a parenthesis.
Oh. So it is colon and then one
And
bracket or parenthesis.
sometimes it's curved, sometimes it's just sort of the straight line, but it's always, you know, the
See, that's why I want to see it, because I wasn't sure. I thought it was colon and then a slash, you know, like a backslash or a forward slash. That's what I understand to be a wry grin or perplexed and confused. But no, you're definitely seeing a smiley face, and somewhat it's like just a unsmiley face with a straight, you know, like a more sober, serious face. In other words, I got you. Okay, and it's colon and then the parentheses, not parentheses colon. Okay, that's how I used to type it, parentheses colon.
okay, and that makes much more sense to me now when you were saying one is more efficient than the other, because I thought, how is one parenthesis more efficient than the other, because they're right next to each other and you're still holding down shift.
but you're doing one before the other, right? So if you go, you know, parentheses colon enter, it's very
you were
in your
talking
fingers, no?
thing too, which would be different. I could see that.
Yeah, no, but I was talking about the smiley face being more efficient. I was doing the parentheses, then the colon, which for my fingers is more efficient on the keyboard. Yeah, because I can go 1, 2, 3 thing, right? Parentheses, I'm holding the shift, parentheses, colon, and then hit enter. My hand, right, as opposed to the other way, it's shift, and then you got to move up, and then you got to come back down to the enter again. I don't know. Seemed more efficient to me, but that's just me. I pay a hyper attention to micro efficiencies.
Right. Yeah. For me, it's easier to do the other way. That's
yeah,
fine.
but maybe you're habituated to it, you know. So that may be for me too.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Habituated to it, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. I used it for a long time, and you know, then later I found out that, you know, when you typed it, it made the smiley face. But way back when it wasn't, it didn't do that.
Right.
Yeah. Which when I first encountered greater than 3, I thought it meant asset.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah, because it was on, you know, I was playing WoW, and you know, the trade chat, they call it trade chat, which is the very open chat where all the trolls and everybody was, and people would make a comment in response to the troll, and they would put, you know, smiley face greater than 3, and I thought it was just kind of a sarcastic way of saying, you know, your asset, because they were being, you know, passive aggressive. They were saying nice things, oh please calm down, don't be so mean and all this, and then they would put that at the end. So it was, because asset was the insult du jour at the time.
Right.
You know, the polite insult that you could call somebody without, you know, really being rude. So that was all over the show. So I, for the longest time, thought about that, and I was always amused when I saw this. I thought they were being sarcastic and funny. It changed the whole of the text. You know, and much later I became aware. So, you know, ignorance is bliss sometimes. I was very amused when I did find that out too.
Yes.
Perceptions are amazing things.
Yeah, it's true. That's funny.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure I wasn't the only one. I gotta say, I gotta show. So I was thinking about this too in terms of perception, and in, you know, modern versus slightly older perceptions. In one of the stories I was listening, you know, they wrote a couple of gods were lolling in the corner, right? It was the sentence was, a few of the gods were lolling in the corner, right? Now, if you read that today, people will say, well, you know, like they were laughing in the corner. You know, okay, but that's not what. Yeah, they were lolling in the corner. It's an old word, which means just kind of hanging around, you know, doing anything really, just messing about, you know, being idle. Really, it's what it means, lolling around, you know.
Well,
so
that must mean I'm old, because I didn't think about LOLing at all until you said, you know, people wouldn't think about that today. That's funny.
Right. I mean, they would think that in that sentence we'd read, they were laughing out loud in the corner. Right? It might be a bit incongruous in the context, like, what the hell, dude? You know, but no, I love that. Dude. Yeah.
That's funny. I like it.
Well, I remember when gay didn't mean homosexual at all. You know? I mean, and it's a term I used. You know, we'd use, oh, he's pretty, you know, pretty gay. You know, which meant just happy, light, airy. You know, which is how come it got to be associated with an effeminate gay man. You know, not homosexuality in general. That was the original thing of it. All right. So back to where we were. Anything more that's come out of this and the connectivity, in terms of the entirety, the whole Nagual perspective, Don Juan, the Mourners, alternative realities?
So I haven't done any more research on this again since before our call on Tuesday. So, nothing majorly new has come up for me, but I talked to Kathy about this yesterday because we had some discussions about things that had happened in the house in Piedmont. And we talked, I don't remember if you and I talked this on Tuesday, but really, it's interesting because a lot of the reason that I think this stuff has come back up at this particular point in time for me has been in part because of the work that she and I have done. Certainly, I think because of the work you and I have done. But, I think the work she and I had been doing sort of stimulated some of these memories that have.
Gotcha. Brilliant.
We've done a lot of work on dream work. And interestingly, I think a lot of the dream work we've done kind of ties into some of this, which I would not have previously connected those dots, but I think it does connect. And we had talked about fairly recently, I was saying on Tuesday, I think, telling you about, it was interesting what you were saying about the second, what was the term you used?
Attention.
What?
Second attention.
There we go. Second attention. Yeah. That really reminds me of the halfway asleep, halfway awake sort of state of mind that I get into. When all of these like really interesting things are going on, it's always when I'm in that sort of halfway asleep, halfway awake stage. And she and I had been talking about that and about some of the unusual things that happen for me, when that's going on. So, as we've been talking about the shadow stuff and sort of following some of these feelings and memories back, I think some of these things have started to resurface that I had packed away and not thought about in a long time because I like it. Because,
yeah, I thought if you see it, you remember it a little bit more. That's usually for me,
I like it. Because of I'll write that in.
Yeah, because when you're doing research, it's well worth looking up.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of things had come back up as a result of some of these regressions and different things that Kathy and I had been doing that I had packed away a long time ago because I was afraid of them or I didn't want to think about it anymore, and they've sort of been coming back to the surface. And because of the work that you and I have been doing, and because I'm thinking about things in a very different way, a lot of these things that have come back up, I'm seeing and understanding in a completely different way than I did when it first happened. And I think for me, a big thing I'm realizing is, I think in part of why these things may be coming back up now is because I am in a different space, mentally, understanding wise, awareness wise. So they're coming back up because there's new pertinence and relevance there for me. There's new information and lessons that I can get out of it. And I see yesterday that one of the biggest things for me, I still don't know. I feel like there's probably a lot of things that I can take away from this particular discussion, and there's probably lots more I have to learn. But one of the biggest things for me, there's been two things really. One, and I think I said this on Tuesday, but it's continued to be a really huge point for me. One is that I have had an acute, I think, I would say little a awareness, not capital A awareness, but little a awareness of death for virtually my entire life before I really even knew what it was.
Yes.
This sort of
Yes.
bizarre like awareness and connection to death, which drove a very deep fear for me that was sort of ever present.
Yeah. I was just waiting to whoever that was.
Oh yeah, I don't know what it was. Something went by the window and
well, maybe it was death.
It could be, but I've had this sort of acute awareness,
alertness or awareness.
The alertness, I don't know, but I wouldn't say like
that makes sense in the context to me, that you were aware of it in a little, which keeps you alert to it,
right.
Which means you don't take it for granted. Well, and I feel in the context of your life, you needed that because it's kept you alive, because you were a little closer to danger than other people would be. Hence, that's fine. Right. It was there, like that critical decision that you didn't follow your friends. To me, that's life.
Right.
You did not go in with them. You didn't do the Ouija, all that nonsense with them. That to me, I don't think there's much there to say it saved your life, because you had that alertness to it, right?
And I think, it's interesting because I realize now, I've always known that fear was just a very regular part of my existence for most of my life. I spent quite a bit of time being just sort of perpetually afraid and not really understanding why. There wasn't any particular imminent danger, obvious danger or whatever, but I've always lived with this very sort of acute sense of fear. And as Kathy and I have done a lot of this work, and especially with dream work, it's become really apparent to me how attuned I was to this concept of death and this major fear from a very, very young age for no obvious reason. I wasn't raised in a household where there was imminent danger. I wasn't watching things where I would get these ideas. How I got into my head. And I said to Kathy, one of the things that's been really fascinating for me to go back and understand is that, I'm really becoming aware of the fact that I was truly having dreams as young as 2 and 3 years old, where recurring dreams, where something was trying to kill me. And that was, that dominated my dreamscape when I was young, was me basically running and trying to escape something that was trying to kill me. But what's fascinating to me now, looking back on it, is I realized that at the time, I really didn't have a cognitive understanding or awareness of what death was. So it was like in my dream when I'm 3 years old, I'm going, something's trying to kill me. It was just this visceral feeling and this fear and running constantly, and I didn't really even know.
It was pure cause and effect. Yeah. There's something, and that's it. It wasn't about death. It was just getting away because it's fearful.
It was about death. That's what I think is interesting. Is I don't think, that's why I say I think I had a little awareness of death without really having an understanding of it. I did not have that concept available to me in my brain, but somehow I had some sort of attunement to this or awareness of it in some sense, because looking back on it now as an adult, that's absolutely what was happening in my dreams. I was having this physical reaction, of basically running for my life without understanding that that's what was happening. And I think because, this fear has been ever present in most of my life for so long, a lot of what, anything that was sort of supernaturally connected, I was petrified of. I was absolutely terrified. I wanted nothing to do with it. And I would, I spend a lot of time thinking I'm crazy. I don't want anything to do with it. I'm denying that this is even existing. Anytime something is happening, I'm going, no, this is not real. This is in my head, blah, blah. And one of the really big things that has happened for me in this process is there's been a huge turnaround for me of fear not being associated with any of this anymore. And not just in the present moment, but even reflecting back on like the things that happened in the Piedmont house, there is no fear associated with that experience for me anymore. It's not that I don't like the healthy respect for things that I don't understand is still absolutely present. And it's not that I am like in a place of no fear and now I'm trying to be like overly confident in this. I still have a very healthy amount of respect, but that gripping fear is gone, which is a major plus for me. But another big thing that's come out of this for me, I think, is I said to Kathy yesterday, it's almost like a very specific and sort of interesting exercise in self-trust for me.
Wow.
Just self-trust in myself now, but sort of a retroactive self-trust in past me that wasn't there before, because I think I have a completely new awareness and understanding of just what I was saying earlier about if it doesn't matter whether any of the things that I was experiencing were palpable to anyone else, whether anyone else understood them, believed in it, agreed that what I was feeling was what was happening. It doesn't matter. No, go lie down. Go lie down.
That bark was pure BMN. Poor spoiled child BMN bark.
Anyway, I don't know who it is that's on our front porch, but they're going to have to go somewhere else. Stop. I guess, yeah, like I was saying earlier, I'm coming to a space of trusting attunement, really, I guess. My ability to perceive that. I think I spend a lot of time mistrusting myself, mistrusting my ability to interpret attunement, to see attunement, to believe that this was really happening. I spent a lot of time sort of denying things because it's just a feeling, or I was the only one experiencing it. And I've a total turnaround in understanding that, like I said before, if it means something to me, then it's important. And it doesn't matter whether anybody else believes me, sees it, feels it, whatever. If it means something to me, then there's something valuable there that I can take away. That's a really huge thing for me. And
very powerful, very potent, big deal, big deal. All right. So this is all very exciting to me. And I think it falls into many things that make a lot of sense to me. First of all, I wanted to ask you is, do you ever get the feeling that you're reliving your life in some way, shape, or form?
It's interesting. I mean, it's interesting you say that. One of the things that Kathy and I have spent a lot of time discussing over the last... Oh, sorry. I was trying to see if I could figure out who this was on the porch. Jayne, they are gone. Relax. Nope, they left a flyer. Okay, must have not been important. It's interesting you say that, because one of the things that Kathy and I have actually been sort of focusing on to a certain extent over the last few sessions has been past life regression, and just sort of exploring the concept of past life, whatever. And I have said to her, this is one of those really interesting things for me, because for me, there is no, I mean, I should say there's not any, there's always a possibility that could be the case, but it's very, very difficult to find sort of concrete scientific proof of past lives being a thing. So past life stuff, belief in that is really based on feeling and, you know, personal experience, memory, whatever. And so I don't totally know what I believe in that sort of term.
Yeah. You have to be open. That's it.
Yeah, but I'm not, you know, I'm not like, no, you know, that's not a thing. I mean, it very well could be. I don't know that I can say for sure. However, there are a lot of things I think I've never gotten a sense of like a memory of some life that's not mine. You know, I know some people talk about.
Yeah. Me neither. Yeah.
However, I have gotten feelings of things that I would say it's not that it doesn't belong to me necessarily, but it doesn't feel like it originated in this experience. If
Gotcha. That makes total sense. Absolutely. When I get is like I kind of know what's coming.
Interesting.
But on a very deep level. Yeah. So things make sense because I know it's heading somewhere. You know, I can't say exactly, but that sort of thing is very vague.
Interesting that you say that, because one of the things that I was just saying the other day, it's been very rare as an adult that I have had recurring dreams. That doesn't happen all that much for me anymore. But as a child, almost, I mean, I would say the majority of my dreams were recurring dreams.
Wow.
Or sometimes this happens to me. Actually, this has happened to me as an adult, where the reason what you said made me think of this is because a lot of times when I was a kid, in recurring dreams, or what I will say I think were recurring dreams, is after I had this dream, you know, a couple of times, I've never been someone who could control my dreams. Even when I have very rare moments of sort of realizing that I'm dreaming, I still don't have control of what's happening in the dream. I can't manipulate the dream. But when I would have recurring dreams, it was fair for me to reach a certain point in the dream and experience this sort of deja vu like feeling and recognize in the dream, oh, I've had this before and I know what's getting ready to happen. And you know,
and you can change it, you can tweak something, you can do slightly different.
I don't think I have ever had the ability to change the course of the dream, but I would have these moments of recognition and go, oh wait, I know what's getting ready to happen. This person's going to walk over there and then this is going to happen. And I've had that same feeling in dreams that may not actually be a recurring dream. It's like somehow, you know, part of my brain catches up to the fact that
I'm dreaming,
I'm dreaming, and it goes, oh, this is getting ready to happen, you know. But I don't think I've certainly had deja vu type experiences. I don't think I've ever had that clear of an experience in real life of going, oh, this is getting ready to happen. You know, this has happened before.
You know, it's more, I don't get it with, you know, immediate now. It's more an understanding of where I'm at. I know where it's kind of heading. And so it's a sense of appropriateness, right? And before, a long time ago, I would have a sense of dread. And then typically, you know, things wouldn't work out well. And so, you know, I, through impeccability, you know, as a kid, I started paying attention and saying, well, you know what, you're on a path here, and I got off that. And then, you know, you avoid the sense of dread. So now it's, even though things might not seem to be, make sense in a normal sort of life, you'd say, wow, what the hell, dude, you're in a situation that's sort of like, doesn't seem good. But because of that feeling, I know it's going to turn out okay. And that's fine, even though it seems completely irrational and illogical. So something makes me know when or when not, which is really fascinating. All right. So I want to share a couple of ideas on this particular point. So like in your dream, right? When you go through and you replay the dream and you get to that point. Now in games, you know, like if you got a mission or something and you do it in a challenge, you play, okay, and then you get killed. you go back and you resurrect and you go and you play again, and then you can change it, right? And you can, and sometimes you do this many times, but you tweak your behavior every time and it gets a little better, a little better. That's how I feel life is for us.
Yeah.
Right. However, when you die in the dream, you retain some sense of understanding of what it is you need to do slightly differently, right? You know, at the moment where you tried this and it didn't work. All right, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to try that. And a lot of times, especially in complex games, it's trial and error. You're experimenting. You have no idea what's going to work. Or it's just practicing your reflexes and to get a right exact moment. You know, it's a tweaking thing. And so, but still, I feel that in life, we're doing this, but on a grander scale. And the key to it that we start, and the key that makes a difference are key understandings,
Okay.
not knowledge, not memory, because the game is too complex for you to go the exact same path. It's almost impossible. It's not like in the game where it's preset and you get to that exact same fight, that exact same boss and all that. Life isn't like that, right? So every time it's conceptually the same, but in the details different. So we need to remember abstract understandings. Like, for instance, Erica dies repeatedly to the same unusual, peculiar thing. She says, well, hell's bells, you know, if I want to get through this life, I need to have a peculiar or an unusual alertness or awareness of death, right? I cannot have a memory of it because it doesn't work with memory. It's a deeper understanding, right? You can't carry memory over, but you can carry characteristics of being over. So now it works like this, to me, in my opinion. Okay, so I'm going to share my theory. Not it's complete theory, and it's easier to share it as a theory, right? So to me, it works like this. You have this pyramid of stuff that you can make. Like, you can make this list, and you can say, okay, what's the most important thing I need to absolutely have in me, kind of to remember. It's not a memory thing, but that's part of me that's to guide me. And for me, of course, top of my list is appropriateness, right? And then, but the list you're making, not all of them are going to come through in the same potency. What's the most important is obviously going to come through in some measure, and then gradually as you go down, it gets less and less and less and less, right? So some of it is contextual appropriateness, but that, I feel, is, the dictionary of power that we've been doing but didn't know we did. Now we are doing this more consciously and conscientiously. So when we get to some point, we will do this when we go over the dictionary of power and clarify it and go through the definitions and all that. So we make two lists. You make your alphabetical master list. Then you make another list arranged in order of importance.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel this kind of an imprinting into your being of what's truly, truly important to you, especially when we look at that list in the context of, if I were to do this over again, what would I add to my list or reprioritize? Yeah. And I feel this is it, that if we get it right, we will end up with that list in such an order and such an emphasized priority that we will be set for no matter what happens. I truly feel this, that we'll be able to win the game, come out of it with deliberate consciousness, that we won't end up, dying before we are ready to die deliberately, to move to the next reality. To me, dying in the conventional sense is just dying inappropriately rather than dying appropriately, right? Dying undeliberately, dying without choice, dying without awareness, dying in unawareness, etc. Right. So I feel that, if you are ready, you won't die. You'll just step into alternative reality. You'll transition rather than die. So this is the key points, all of these understandings. It's very massive. And I see, for me, how powerful my dictionary of power that I, put together much later was right from the get-go. Before I even had the words, words like appropriateness and context and sobriety. When I encountered those, they were like, especially context. Context was a visual thing. It was almost a spiritual experience when context came into being. It's so potent, So I do feel this is, understanding context. Without understanding context, we just look at things in one bubble all the time. and we miss most of life. That's why context was so huge, in terms of appropriateness. You cannot possibly apply appropriateness without understanding context, right? That's why and context is, when I was a kid, who talks about context? Just wasn't part of it's just not part of your thinking, right? But when you do see, wow, things are the same, stuff applies differently as soon as you shift context, and multiple contexts can exist in the same spot, the same place in time. This is like, what a leap in awareness. No, huge deal. So I feel that that's sort of our task, and why the Dictionary of Power is a dictionary of power. I was very inspired when I came up with that. I really thought about it a lot, the name for it. And it was truly, I felt, man, this is, sometimes when you get, that's it, that's the name, that's right. The same thing with wave impeccability. It all falls into place. It's really key. It's amazing to me how long it took for appropriateness, the conception, the term, the word was around. Obviously, we know what the word appropriate is from small. That's inappropriate. At least we know what inappropriate is. I was told plenty times what's inappropriate. I was never told what's appropriate, or seldom. But typically, when I was told what was appropriate, they meant proper, and they used the word proper.
Yeah.
But typically, even when they didn't say proper, they meant it when they said appropriate.
Right.
But appropriateness as a philosophical concept that came fairly late-ish for me. It came, in when I was doing my reading project, when I was reading Musashi. So I don't know, when I was just 18, 19, 20, 21, somewhere around there, plus or minus 20. So, which is as a profound philosophical concept, it's, to me, amazed me that it took so long to come. Yeah, I was reading Musashi, and he said, be like the basket weaver, be like the carpenter. Every bloody second thing was this. I said, bloody hell, man, you just could sum your whole book up in one word, appropriateness. I was kind of irritated at the end of it. I mentioned it before. The Book of Five Rings, which is like a classic. It's one of those business books, like Art of War and all that. It's like, dude, your book can be written in one word. Fascinating to me how it works, but still, the application of it, that was there from just when I way back when, as long as I could remember. So this I find really fascinating, and the more I go on, the more I see how the things that are priority on my Dictionary of Power list were there in the beginning. That I didn't realize until I started doing wave impeccability. That the stuff that I'm really, really emphasizing and I see as super important, they were super important there. Now I don't know, maybe it's possible, there is no time, and it's a simultaneous thing. All right. So I want to mention one other magical point. So in the same vein as we potentially may be reliving things, and we are each time updating our power list, and this comes through into the now, there's other possibilities, particularly this thing of the second attention or heightened awareness. So Carlos spends massive amounts of his time in the company of Don Juan and his cohorts, as he calls them, other sorcerers in his party who train him and instruct him, right? And this is where the bulk of his training and instruction goes on. And then he gets, out of a thing, and he's the regular old idiot in the world, right? And when he's in heightened awareness, he laments the fact that he's, remembering himself being this idiot that doesn't remember, right? So that raises the possibility that this could be something that applies to us, particularly with our poor sleeping.
Right.
All we know, preposterous things happen, and during our sleeping time, we are in the second attention. Now, Carlos would say, but my life isn't, and that's really bothered him. He said, but how can this possibly be? Surely I'd remember the stuff. But his life was rejiggered and configured so that it would all make sense to him. That your brain rationalizes it to all make sense, right? So always his life had continuity until at some point he started to see that there wasn't, and then he started to reconcile all these things and put it together. Long, complicated stories, but this is not something that I can ignore. In other words, this stuff might be coming from some activities in our second attention, which is now filtering through. Right? We just believe we're learning it and I'm making my Dictionary of Power. Meanwhile, it's all coming from there. It's entirely plausible, right? So it's just something to consider. Or, dream realities, which same thing, that we're having this, it doesn't have to be physical thing. Somebody comes and knocks on your door in the night and, interacts with you in this, and then they go. It could be that, it's quite possible, but it could also be just in dream reactions.
Right.
So this is very interesting. So just a final point on this, really something to consider, that there's more going on, I feel, than we're aware of. That's my point. I really do feel that. Also, in terms of the lucid dreaming and conscious dreaming, Don Juan calls it dreaming, all italicized. We'd call it capital D dreaming. That, this is lucid dreaming. It's being aware in your dream. It's knowing that you're dreaming. Like you've had a little bits of it that you say, oh, I know what's going to happen. The next step is to say, oh, I must be dreaming, right? And then dream. Now, dreaming really grabbed me hard. I was obsessed with lucid dreaming, right? And actually, even before Don Juan, just in my readings with Monroe, for instance, and astral travel and all that stuff, I researched a lot of that. I just thought this was like too fantastic and too awesome. So by the time Don Juan mentioned it, that added even more to it. So I set about really making every effort I could to lucid dream. Right now, I did succeed, and I still have them very occasionally where I'm aware I'm dreaming, and I have it for a little bit, and then it goes. But at the time, in order to do it, and I remember we took a little break. We went on my uncle's farm, and I was just kind of helping out. We just basically had time to do, we didn't do much, so just like a little break. And in order for me to do lucid dreaming, I literally had to think every second of the day, I want to be lucid in my dream. I want to be lucid. I want to be aware in my dream. I mean, it was like 100% attention management for the entire day, right? And it was a real act of concentration. I mean, that took massive energy, effort, focus, attention, discipline, problem, you name it. And I was able to do it. And I succeeded on, a couple of nights in a row doing this.
Wow.
But man, the effort involved was astronomical. So I said, surely there's something more going on. It cannot be that it takes that much effort for me to do it. Don Juan did say, he divides people into stalkers and dreamers, and then there's sort of another category as well. You're a natural dreamer, you're a natural stalker, and all this. So I said, okay, likely I'm a very unnatural dreamer, and it's just not my vibe, my thing. Also, I also figured that maybe it's just a timing thing, that I need to focus on the things that I am expert at.
Right.
And the dreaming will come when it comes, right? I've got to deal with stuff, because I do feel I would never get to way of impeccability now if I had become immersed in the dream, if I had become proficient in the dreaming. None of this would have come about. So, I suspect that it was just not something, that it was a peculiar desire for mine that was just inappropriate. And, it's effort versus reward. And however it be, the universe, or, similar beings or aliens, or God knows whoever's training me in second attention, Don Juan and his, the center, whoever the hell, I don't care what it is, but, they're putting me off in a way, they put blocks on it for whatever reason, or I did, for all I know, I've done it to myself, so.
Yeah.
So it's just something to consider, it is interesting to do. It's quite fascinating. It's really intriguing. So, because it's a way to gain power, to gain energy. That's the main point of it. Right? So the more you do it, the more you gain energy.
Right.
So. Yeah, and that's what Don Juan says, that this is the whole point of the two beings. You can't be in one too much, because it drains energy from the other one. And, so when you go between the two, the one gives energy to the other. They feed off each other, which kind of makes sense. Yeah, so lots of things to think about, just to put things into context, right? It's pretty fun. It's pretty exciting. Stuff falls in. So I'm just sort of mentioning this to pay attention to stuff being outside the bounds of normal, to open up to these alternative possibilities. We don't know what they are, but, and so we are close to them, that we start looking and we see clues that we didn't see before. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, with the past life stuff.
Yes.
Did anything come up as a remembrance or not with Kathy?
So it did. It was really interesting. We based the past life, we have only done one past life regression, and we based it on the feeling in my chest, or wherever, because
say the thing.
yeah, because I told her that to me, this is something that I have always felt for as long as I can remember, and it feels to me as if it predates me. This
Wow.
it
Wow.
as if this is something. I think I said a little bit ago that there are certain things that sort of feel as if it's not that they don't belong to me or aren't associated to me, but they don't feel like they originated in this experience.
They transcend you.
Right.
Yeah, or at least this you. Yeah.
That is one of them to me. And so we started with that feeling, and she said, okay, let's just kind of go back kind of based on that feeling and see if you can remember anything, associated with that feeling that maybe goes further back than a memory that you have here.
Yeah.
And
wow.
so the things that came up, so one of the things, and I talked about this before, that Kathy and I both had this sort of interesting realization in this discussion, that both of us don't seem to have what appears to be a typical visual experience with sort of visualization, like imagining something, visualizing something.
Yeah.
Apparently, according to what she said, when she has done several visualization things, and people that she's done this with have said most people, when they visualize something, even just as simple as just if you said imagine a red balloon, and they close their eyes and they're thinking about a red balloon, it's a very clear image in their mind. It is literally like they are seeing a red balloon right in front of them, and they can tell you exactly what it looks like and the shape and whatever. And that for me, and also for Kathy, it's a much more abstract sort of a visualization. I described it as almost like essence of whatever it is that I'm trying to imagine. It's not concrete, it's not tangible, it's not like hard, fast lines. It's just sort
abstract.
It's like this fuzzy, opaque sort of essence of whatever it is that I'm trying to imagine. And it actually, what's interesting is when you were saying at the beginning of our call about when you look at something for too long and it starts to get weird, that's really what it's like for me when I try to visualize something. If I focus too much on trying to see the specific details of what I'm visualizing, it just sort of dissipates and goes away. But if I just think, okay, red balloon, I get this sort of essence of a red balloon, but it's not something that's concrete.
Yeah. I hear you. It's the same for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting because apparently that's not particularly common. So for me, the things that came up when we did this regression were not what I would call, it wasn't like I was dreaming and I could see these very clear images of, I'm in this space and whatever. It was very much more the sort of essence concept of what I was seeing. But there were 3 different things that came up, and all of them for me evoked connection to my Uncle Jay, who passed away before I was 1. And I said, I have no idea if this is really connected to him or not, but for me, the first thing that I thought of when I saw these 3 different things was him. So to me, there's got to be some kind of connection.
Oh, interesting.
And I told her at the end of the session, I told her that for me, it makes perfect sense that part of this feeling that I have is connected to him, because I've always had a very deep connection with him, even though I never met him. But it was very clear to me that while he may be part of what is associated with this thing, it was not the whole. There's more there than just a connection to him. which is interesting. So we haven't done another regression to try to find out what else is there, but it makes sense to me that he would be part of that. But Kathy said something really interesting when we got done, and I said, you know, the one thing that sort of jumped out at me was for sure connection to my Uncle Jay. And she said that her teacher, Yvonne, said something once about the concept of when you choose to come into the world, you know, when you choose to be born, that you can choose to bring a certain number of souls with you when you come.
Wow.
And so she said, you know, I don't know, that just sort of popped into my mind when you said that about your uncle.
Very interesting.
Really interesting concept to me, because I know you and I have discussed this, that my connection to my uncle, and I think you asked at some point in the past whether I felt like it was possible that I had been him or not. And I said, I don't think so, because for me, he feels very separate from, not, it does not, there feels like there is a clear distinction between the two. I don't feel like I was,
but yet a deep bond, yeah.
There is clearly some connection there. And so it's an interesting concept to me. I mean, I don't know, you know, it could be anything. I don't know what I specifically believe, but I definitely have always had a deep connection with him. And I do feel like that is a part of what's happening with this. But there's more to it than that. I know that.
Wow, very cool, very cool. So I'm thinking also, I mean, the past life regression thing is very tricky because of suggestibility. Right. Even if the person is very open, they might just say, what are you seeing? By implication, there is something to see.
Right.
So your brain creates something to see. So that's especially when you're using hypnosis for this. Right. So this is the one thing that was always the bugaboo when it comes to past life regression. You know, I mean, maybe if they ask you, are you seeing something? And if not, that's okay. You know, it's very difficult to be neutral. It's almost impossible to be neutral.
Well,
yeah. Anyway.
I said to Kathy when we were discussing the idea of doing past life regression, I said, you know, it sounds really interesting to me. I'm definitely open to this concept. However, something that sort of concerns me is that I'm afraid that I may get nothing. You know, I may not see anything, nothing.
Right.
And I said, you know,
exactly, which also gets us to great stuff.
Said, you know, the reason that I feel that way is because I do have difficulty visualizing things. You know, if the typical path of doing this is, you know, you sort of get these flashes of memory or whatever, I have difficulty visualizing concrete things, and I'm sort of concerned that I may not get any answers from this. You know, there may be nothing that comes up. And so we actually discussed that prior to doing the past life regression. And she said, you know, if nothing comes, that's fine. Like, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter. Just don't push it, you know, just be. If something comes up, awesome. If nothing comes, that's fine. It doesn't matter. We can go a different route. We can do different things. So I was when I went into that, I was actually thinking, you know, okay, if nothing comes up for me, I'm just not going to worry about it. You know, it's fine. I'm just going.
Perfect.
It was
very important.
I got 3 very specific individual visualizations, which I was concerned was not going to be the case at all. And so that was interesting. But
yeah, very interesting. Furthermore, I was going to say, if you maybe something to try, if you're interested, to ask Kathy to you know, in hypnosis, plant a somewhat of a post-hypnotic suggestion, you know, in the context of when you're dreaming, you're going to become aware that you're dreaming. And, you know, Don Juan says, look at your hands. You know, I don't know, he doesn't specify which way, but I'm assuming, I think he says, look at the back of your hands. And that's kind of your signal. And then from there, you look away and, you know, you kind of stuff begins to fade, you go back to your hands again. And then
Right.
from your hands, you look away, right? So maybe some sort of suggestion of that kind, if you want to do the lucid dreaming. I'm very curious to see if it will work. If it does, I'll most certainly book a session with Kathy where she can do it for me, you know. So it may be a way to jump start that. I've never seen in all the reading I did, and at that time I absolutely did every single thing that was even remotely connected to it. There wasn't much available, very little actually, you know. But now there's a lot more. I've never seen it connected to hypnosis, and I don't see why it shouldn't work.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I like the idea very much, you know, very much. Yeah, I wonder also how hypnosis will work with habit changing.
That's an interesting question. Yeah.
You know, to place that post again, you don't remember that you've got this supposed hypnotic suggestion. When you do this habit, it's going to trigger you to remember to do the associated habit, right? So, okay, when you stir your coffee, it reminds you to zoom out and be deliberate and be aware, etc., etc. You know, I mean, that's to me how it works. But I definitely feel that could be implanted via hypnosis. It'd be pretty good.
It's interesting because for me, the hypnotherapy sessions we do, I am very much aware. I mean, it's not like
Yeah.
remember our discussions, or I mean, it's
Right.
very much I'm aware. I'm just in, I would say, a more relaxed, maybe mental state.
Yeah. They are using it for different results, yeah, or different effect, yeah.
Goodness gracious. Orval has ranked 15 times today. Tank stuff. But I know it's different for everybody. So that's another one of those interesting things for me that I often wonder, okay, you know, is my experience really different in hypnotherapy than other people's, or, you know, is it kind of similar? Very interesting.
No, there's definitely an awareness. I've been hypnotized once, you know, I was on stage with Max Colley and did all the stupid things, you know, laid an egg like a chicken and I had a baby and did all sorts of wonderful things, right? And so, yeah, you are definitely aware. You just don't care. You just do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And also, apparently, you know, like the friend I went with, apparently he said to me at one point, he just said sleep, and I fell asleep and I didn't remember that. So there are different depths and degrees of it. So it depends on the practitioner, what they're trying to achieve, you know, especially with post-hypnotic suggestions. They have to specifically say, when you come out of this, you will not remember what I'm saying to you now. So, you know, it depends on what they're doing. Yeah, I think probably a lot of, you know, hypnotherapists are reluctant to use that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because it raises lots of ethical problems, you know.
So. Absolutely.
I mean, to me, I would say if you're a practitioner of hypnotherapy and you are going to, if ever, use a post-hypnotic suggestion, you would have to record that.
Right.
I mean, not that you can get people to do things that are against what they wouldn't otherwise do, but that's the point, though. You can't get people to do things against their conscience, but people will do all sorts of things.
Right.
So some people's conscience has no conscience. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
So, yeah, so I think it's, you know, but still, you know, in this case of the dreaming, you could even, you know, write the script yourself and just to have that implanted. So, you know, it'd be very interesting to see how it works. It'd be great, you know, and, you know, at least chat to her about it, see what she does. You know, it depends on her hypnosis, you know, I think there are probably different fields of hypnosis, different types, different ranges, different degrees, you know.
Right.
So. But that's if you want to do the dreaming. I don't know if it appeals to you or not. I'm assuming it does.
I have always thought it would be really interesting to be able to change what's happening in the dream or go in a different direction. And that's never been a thing for me.
Right. Now, if that's a motivation, be aware that first you need to learn to stabilize your awareness in the dream.
Okay.
To change it, that comes very much later, you know. But again, you know, from Don Juan's point of view, that's kind of a parlor trick. You want to get away from that, because the idea is you want to start to perceive reality as it actually is, not just import your this description that we have on our waking world into the dream. You're just back to square one. Right.
I guess maybe change is not exactly the word I'm going for, but I'm thinking like in my dream, I'm not sure how to describe it exactly, but when often feels like I'm sort of being pulled along for the ride. And
Yes,
to
yes.
the point that it's like I don't necessarily have choice. Like
To be able to exercise choice. That's what you meant to say. I got you.
what that's really what I'm going for, is to be able to have sort of a conscious choice thing happening in my dream, and not to necessarily like be in my dream and go, oh, I want to, okay, like I want the sky to be a different color now and I want unicorns to come flying through, but to be able to go, okay, I'm looking at this dream objectively and I want to choose that I'm going to go here and, do this.
Yeah. And that's the point. Exactly. So first, the very first step absolutely is to learn to be able to stabilize your awareness.
Okay.
To say, I'm dreaming and I'm seeing stuff and I'm dreaming and okay, I'm dreaming again and I'm looking, I'm not staring at anything and
Right.
I'm not getting overly excited either. That sobriety is absolutely critical. The moment you get too excited, the dream goes. Right? So emotional control is absolutely critical. So, this is key. This is very, very key. For me though, there's a peculiar side effect of my openness and my appropriateness when it comes to accepting impossibility.
Okay.
And nothing in my dream surprises me. I'm like, yeah, okay. So Erica comes to me and she talks to me and she's got 3 eyes. I'm like, yeah,
That's true.
why not? It's quite possible. So I'm not, that doesn't work for me, because that's one of the ways to is to sort of ridiculous, but this can't be, I must be dreaming. That doesn't work for me at all. Yeah.
I don't think that's a thing for me either.
Yeah. Because I'm like, okay with it. And I see lots of stuff in life. I'm like, yeah, all right. So what? Like whatever. I'm not phased by the unusual, in other words.
No, I think that's I don't remember ever having.
So you need different stimuli,
I don't ever have a dream where I stopped and went like,
So when I was doing it, I say again.
I don't think I've ever had a moment in a dream where I stopped and thought, that's not realistic, so I must be dreaming.
Exactly. Everything is realistic to me.
Right.
Which is a good thing to be that open. But, in the shift though, because like I said, we don't want to just be replacing one description with another. We want to start to learn to perceive energy directly, to see that sort of underlying, again, when you listen to people who have mystical experiences, or the Zen guys, and when they see enlightenment, they're describing things. And Don Juan does this a lot. He says, I can't really describe it, but he talks about like luminous filaments for light and energy. Right. And he says, look, I'm doing my best, but you can't really have to experience it to see it. Right. That's the kind of thing that we're after. But first you need to stabilize whatever it is in the current circumstance, So the thing for me is, at some point, I really couldn't see a purpose to it. And that killed it for me. If I can't see a purpose, I lose that. Then later I sort of I think that it was imprinted on me a little bit in an emphasis way, that it's pointless. And then I lose interest for me. And I need to rekindle that. It's very hard for me to rekindle interest.
Right.
Yeah. Very difficult. Very difficult.
Sorry.
Who's that?
No, Sarah's here because Mom came up to get her hair done.
Brilliant. How is Kay? I miss her. I didn't see her, just
good. So. She came up here on a real quick, like down and back to get her hair done. So she dropped Sarah off while she's at the salon. Made a noise.
Well, I hope I see her next week, because I didn't see her at all this week.
Yeah. I made a noise with the kitchen table, and Sarah like jumped up and.
I gotcha. She's such a funny dog. Hello, Sarah. Hello, dog. Hello, girl. Hi. You recognize me? Yes. Hello, Sarah. Oh, I got a tail wag. See? Brilliant. I don't know if that's me or you though, but I'm hoping it's me.
There's us talking, and he's getting jealous. Yeah. There it comes.
All right. Hello, Tank. Hello, dog. Yeah. You're a good dog, Tank. You're a good dog. We do love you, even though you're a beer man. Well, at least half of us loves you.
Yes. Oh, my. Anyway, I hope that she will be able to make an appearance again soon. She's been working really hard on getting her garage.
That's good. Oh, please, that she's busy. I just don't want to lose momentum and connectivity. That's very important. because sometimes that happens, So I do want to stay connected, so that's important. So just a reminder of that.
Yes, I will do it. I will do it.
And I love our continuity and connectivity. It's massively important. And there's so much that, so much more. Look at all the smallness, it just amazes me how it compounds on itself. So, I fully suspect that our interactions and just there's not a randomness to it. You know what I mean? This I feel a lot of times, and I don't always get to see it. Later on I do. So I do feel that this is not just a normal thing that's come about. There's a moreness to it. All right, good. I seldom get phone calls, but I'm getting.
Okay, well, whoops. Oh, all right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah, well, I was trying to say answer. Oh no, never mind. They hung up. Never mind. So,
all right, I've got to jump off anyway because I have to go get done. So I will. I'm really, really enjoying our little side discussion here.
Yes. It's very exciting. Very exciting stuff.
I really do think the timing is perfectly appropriate because of where I'm at my mental right now. So this is really good.
Exactly.
So
magic. We do live in magical worlds.
Yeah, we do. It's true. I believe Joe is planning on joining tomorrow, so I should see you then. So, all right. Sounds good.
Very exciting. It's just a little quick thought that came.
Yeah.
The property I'm moving to is significant in the light of our conversation.
Very interesting.
Just came to me right now, like, oh, there's a significance, like that's the spot or the place to be for whatever reason.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Well,
I had that before, never had that feeling in the context of our conversation specifically. Before it was okay, it came about, I was looking at stuff, it met my criteria, okay, boom. But now, right as you're about to go, it just jumped in there. So really very exciting.
Yeah, I like
yes, we shall see.
All right.
Brilliant.
I'll catch up with you tomorrow.
Fantastic. Bye-bye, Erica. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow. Yes, see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.